I'm Leo Sidran with The Art of the Story. In jazz, it is sometimes said that the spaces in between the notes carry as much weight as the notes themselves. It's as much about what you don't play as what you do play. One question that remains somewhat unanswered is if the same logic applies to the gigs you play or don't play. The Cookers are an all-star ensemble of veteran jazz musicians that include Eddie Henderson, Cecil McBee, George Cables, and Billy Hart. Players who came up in the 1960s and 70s inside working bands led by artists like Herbie Hancock, Charles Lloyd, and Max Roach. Trumpeter David Weiss helped assemble the group nearly 2 decades ago.
It's a real band. These guys came up in a time where you had bands. They were part of important bands of the era, and they know how to function in a band.
The Cookers were scheduled to perform at the Kennedy Center last New Year's Eve. They had played there before, and they were hired by a longtime jazz programmer who had helped to build the center's jazz presence. Then, 10 days before the scheduled show, the situation changed. The building was renamed, public debate intensified, some artists began withdrawing. The band suddenly found itself at the center of a political moment that it had not anticipated.
The real problem with us was that he put his name on the building 10 days before the gig.
That timing mattered. Contracts had been signed, expenses were mounting, and as the word spread, pressure was growing, especially online.
The blowback was intense. It was a lot. It was unnuanced. It was social media.
Within the band, there were real discussions. One option was to play the concert and address the moment musically.
But we could have gone up there and played protest music. We could have played Lift Every Voice and Sing. We could have done stuff to express musically how we usually express things.
They talked about repertoire that would signal their position without turning the event into some kind of an overt speech. But as Weiss described it, the broader climate didn't allow much room for nuance. The decision became less about repertoire and more about responsibility to each other, to their audience, and to their own sense of professionalism.
So there was a lot of back and forth, and then when finally one guy was like, "Look, somebody called me this and called me that, and like a lifelong friend, and I really can't do this." And I was like, "Well, none of us can," and we just called it.
The Cookers canceled their New Year's Eve performance, and there were financial consequences. Supporters stepped in to cover the expenses, and unexpectedly, the band found itself receiving more national attention than it had in years. Weiss acknowledges this irony.
I guess ticket sales are better now. People are symbolically buying a record, and that's very nice. Hopefully some of them will like it.
Still, he's cautious about what this means.
We're still good. We're still one of the better bands out here, and want to rest on that.
For the Cookers, the music remains central. They're not a protest organization. They're a working band built on decades of shared history, discipline, and collective listening. While last New Year's Eve may be the most legendary gig they never played, the Cookers are still on tour right now. They'll begin their spring run at Dizzy's in New York on February 19th and will continue through the weekend. As for the Kennedy Center, it remains at the center of political and cultural debate, and it's expected to close this summer for a major renovation, leaving that New Year's Eve concert as just one in a long line of concerts not played there. You can hear my full conversation with David Weiss of the Cookers at WBGO.org. I'm Leo Sidran, WBGO News.